Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie, and today we're going down the rabbit hole and exploring Mooncat's new Alice in Wonderland collection in collaboration with Disney. So I'm super excited about this video. Alice in Wonderland is one of Michelle's favorite movies, and she has this really sweet letter on what this collab means to her. So I'll have that linked below, or it should be on the website so you can give it a read. I'm really excited about this collab because it comes in the most adorable collection box. I can't wait to show you some close-ups of that soon. But I also want to give a big thank you to Mooncat for sponsoring today's video. I'm just really excited about it because I do love Mooncat, and this is also my first sponsored YouTube video. But as always, I will be sharing my honest thoughts and opinions on these. So without further ado, let's get into the swatches. Just kidding. First, we have to take a look at this super cute collection box. It's shaped like a cookie chest, and I think that's just so fun for this release. So here's a look at all sides. The box is a deep but bright blue, and it's obviously covered with all these Alice in Wonderland motifs. Some of them are glossy along with the text, so it really shines and pops against the matte blue. So there's these two purple ribbon tabs on the front that you can actually open to get into the polishes. So when you lift the top one, you see 3 of the shades, a glass crystal file, and this little envelope that holds some cute nail art stickers. This set actually comes with 2 sheets, which I like since it's kind of a smaller size. But yeah, this is the little sleeve that it comes in. It's super cute. I love the purple color. And here are the stickers. They are so adorable. I love the designs and the colors of them. They are just super cute and perfect for this theme. And here's a look at the shapeshifter glass file. This is basically the same product that Mooncat already offers, but this is just the custom design for the Alice in Wonderland theme. It's really pretty. So going back to the box, when we look at the bottom and pull that bottom tab out, this little drawer slides out to reveal the other 3 shades, which are magnetics, along with a magnetic wand. So this is just such beautiful packaging. And the last thing I want to show as far as the packaging goes is the individual cartons that the polishes come in. They are just so beautiful. They're basically designed just like the collection box, where it's the matte blue with the Alice in Wonderland motifs and the purple glossy details. And even the inside is designed as well, very similar to the Hocus Pocus 2 collection. So these are just so beautiful. I love the attention to detail. Now getting into the swatches, the first shade we have is Wish I Hadn't Cried So Much, which is described as a light blue lacquer filled with blue shimmer, color-shifting iridescent flakies, and micro hollow glitter. So I would describe this as having a jelly-like base. You can see it's pretty sheer on the first coat, but it's still tinted enough that it's not totally clear or transparent. And it's absolutely packed with those flakies and shimmer. So I think you could wear this in one coat for a super ethereal look, or even layer it as a topper. On 2 coats, the color builds up really nicely and you get so many more flakies, but I wouldn't call it fully opaque since it still has such a light colored base, and my nails are also longer, so you might be able to get away with 2 coats if you don't mind a little bit of nail peeking through. But I ended up doing 3 coats for this one. It's still not exactly 100% opaque, but I'm personally not bothered by it at all. I think it's most noticeable in the sunlight, but in most other lighting, it looks pretty opaque. Safe to say, this is definitely my top favorite from this collection. It is just so magical. So here it is in both indoor and direct sunlight, just so you can see how it looks. Again, it's still a little tiny bit sheer, but the nail line doesn't bother me. Next up we have Do You Play Croquet, which is described as a light orchid pink lacquer filled with color-shifting iridescent flakies, soft pink shimmer, reflective glitter, and micro holographic glitter. So this one has more of a pigmented crelly base. You can see on the first coat alone, I do get really great and even coverage, but it's still a little bit sheer, so you can make out my nail line a tiny bit. I think most people can probably get away with just 2 coats for this shade because it does build up really nicely. It's almost fully opaque for me, and I think normally I would just wear this shade in 2 coats. But for the sake of the video, I decided to do a third just to show you how much it builds up if you were curious. So I think this one is super pretty. I'm normally not the biggest fan of these orchid, pinky, purple kind of shades, but I love the flakies and hollow sparkle in this one so much. The only criticism I had for this shade was that you couldn't really see the reflective glitter, which is actually a reddish pink color. It kind of got lost in the base color or maybe just among the other hollow glitter, but I wouldn't say it's a total letdown for me because it's still super sparkly. So I think if you hate reflective glitter, this shade is still worth getting because it's just hardly noticeable. So here's how it looks in indirect lighting and in direct sunlight. I really love how the flakies pop in the shade. The next shade we have is A Very Merry Unbirthday, which is described as a purple lacquer jam-packed with shifty blue shimmer and color-shifting blue to purple multi-chrome flakies. I think I would describe the base in this one to be more on the jelly side. It's obviously pretty sheer, but mainly because I noticed it pulls away from my tips a little bit. But either way, the shimmer in this one is just so strong. It kind of reminds me of the blue shimmer in other iconic Mooncat shades like Ghostipicate, for example, so I really loved how glowy this one looks. So on the second coat, I feel like it built up really nicely, but you could still see through to some nail line in certain angles or lighting, but the shimmer and flakies are so plentiful in this one that I feel like it kind of covers it up. So I think if you have shorter nails, you could get away with 2 coats, but I decided to do a third one for this one as well. And it definitely deepened the base color a bit more, which made the shimmer so much more glowy. Even though I wasn't super crazy about this shade at first, I really ended up loving the final look with that blue to purple magenta shift. It's just so vibrant and beautiful, and I feel like even in the shade, it almost looks like a multi-chrome, so I really love the color combination in this one. Now getting into the magnetics, the first one we have is Cheshire Cat, which is a purple magnetic lacquer filled with multicolored iridescent flakies and micro holographic glitter that reveals a bright pink magnetic stripe. So like most Mooncat magnetics, this one has a slightly jelly leaning base, but it's also very pigmented and opaque. Personally, I really love Mooncat's magnetics compared to a lot of other brands because they tend to be just a lot more opaque. So yeah, I really love the deep purple color this one has because it provides the perfect contrast for the pink magnetic shimmer, and all of those iridescent flakies, they just really pop. So since this shade is super dark, I ended up just needing 2 coats for this one, and it was basically opaque. Again, I think in direct sunlight, you could still see through to your nail line a tiny bit, but it wasn't enough for me to do a third. I also love how this looks like a galaxy in the shade. So aside from the different lighting, I also wanted to show this with the velvet effect and also with no effect. I normally prefer a velvet look to my magnetics, but for this shade, I think it's almost mandatory to have that stripe. The next shade is Mad Hatter, and this one is described as a black magnetic lacquer jam-packed with micro holographic glitter and green to purple multi-chrome flakies that reveal a rich green magnetic stripe. So since this has a black jelly base, I pretty much had the same experience as the last shade where I just needed 2 coats for this one to be full coverage. I definitely think this one is cool, but it feels a little familiar. But of course, we'll wait until the comparison portion to see it next to some other shades I'm thinking of. But yeah, overall, I don't really have complaints about this shade. I mean, it builds up really beautifully. I love how the flakies pop against the black base. And I think the shimmer in this one is pretty too. It has a green to blue and maybe almost purple kind of shift to it. So really pretty overall. I thought this one also looked like a galaxy in low lighting. It's just so cool and colorful how those flakies pop. But yeah, in direct sunlight, as you can see, because this is a jelly base, there is still a little bit of visible nail line. And here it is with the velvet effect and also with no effect, just applied as is. So I think this one does look beautiful with the velvet effect, but the flakies kind of get lost, so I prefer it with a stripe. And rounding out the collection, we have Bread and Butterflies, and this one is described as a golden yellow magnetic lacquer filled with color shifting pink to green to gold iridescent flakies and micro holographic glitter that reveals a subtle green magnetic aura. So I'm not sure how it'll be exactly on the website, but they're essentially describing this one as an optional magnetic because of how soft and subtle it is. So price-wise, this one is going to be listed for $15, while the other two magnetics will be for $16. I honestly think that was an interesting choice because I don't know if I would say the magnetic effect is weaker in this shade. If anything, I would just guess that the color doesn't pop as much because there's not much contrast. I guess looking back on the swatch video, it does look a little bit softer maybe, but at the same time, I can still clearly see the magnetic strip there. So you'll have to let me know what you think about this being an optional magnetic. I honestly like the slightly cheaper price point for it because again, I think the magnetic effect is still there, even if it is subtle. But overall, the polish applied really beautifully. It does have the most sheer formula though, so even after 3 coats, you can still see through to my nail line a decent amount, but it's still really pretty in my opinion. And here it is with the velvet effect and also with no effect. I think if seeing your nail line bothers you, going with the velvet effect would be the best thing, or you can just layer this over a light colored base. Now moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Wish I Hadn't Cried So Much and looking at it next to Acidwashed from the Kaleidoscope Haze collection. This one is kind of similar in theory because it's this blue flaky packed jelly, but they're very different shades of blue, so they're not comparable in my opinion. If anything, I would say the closer shade is If Frogs Had Wings. These base colors are a lot more similar, but the difference is that If Frogs Had Wings has a pinkish kind of purple shimmer to it, and there's also a lot less flakies, so they end up looking really different on the nail. Again, Wish I Hadn't Cried So Much just has so many more flakies and is just more blue leaning overall, so I actually think I like that one more. Next for Do You Play Croquet, we're going to be looking at this next to Bermuda Triangle, which recently came out in the Mermaid Tales collection. This one's obviously more purple leaning and has more of a blue shimmer and flaky mix in it. And so I thought maybe a closer comparison would be Moonfairy, which is another pinky purple, but this one is a lot lighter, and the flakies in this one are a little bit more on the yellow and gold side, but they still are kind of similar. If anything, I would say there's more flakies in Moonfairy. So yeah, on the nail, these look so different from each other. They are not dupes, even if they do have some similar elements. But yeah, this is 2 coats of each. Then for A Very Merry Unbirthday, I wanted to show this next to Amuck from the Hocus Pocus 2 collection. I was just reminded of the shade because of that kind of reddish purple base with this electric blue flaky kind of mix, but these are very, very different. Obviously, Amuck is also a magnetic, and it's a lot more opaque too and just not as glowy. Then I thought to compare this next to Mortals Be Warned, which is one of Mooncat's most iconic multi-chromes. And this one definitely has a very similar, if not the same, kind of multi-chrome shift where it goes from that bright blue to magenta, but that's the only thing that they have in common. Mortals Be Warned is a much darker purple base color, and there's also no flakies in it. So again, they really only share the shimmer, so similar vibes for sure, but totally different finishes. Next, for Cheshire Cat, I wanted to quickly show this next to Melaka Mystica from the Hocus Pocus 2 set. That one is more of a darker blue jelly base with some flakies, but it's not nearly as much as Cheshire Cat. So I also wanted to show this next to Firefly Forest, which is another darker purple with purple shimmer and flakies, but there is just no comparison between these. There is just so much more going on in Cheshire Cat. Then for Mad Hatter, I had to see this next to We're Back Witches, also from the Hocus Pocus 2 set. This was the one I was immediately reminded of when seeing Mad Hatter. Obviously, We're Back Witches has more of a yellow, golden, flaky, and there's more purple in Mad Hatter. But yeah, I also wanted to compare this next to Weeping Willow from the somewhat recent Folktale collection, but this one has more of a teal emerald kind of color, and there's no flakies in this one, but there is reflective glitter, so it's still sparkly, but not quite anything like Mad Hatter. So here it is directly applied on the nail, 2 coats of each with no effect. And they have some similarities, I would say. With no effect, maybe Mad Hatter is more similar to Weeping Willow, but then once you apply the magnetic effect, I would say it's a little bit more similar to We're Back Witches, but not dupes by any means. And lastly, for Bread and Butterflies, I wanted to show this next to I'm a Mother Effin' Supernova, which is this gold micro glitter formula. So they're very different when it comes to finishes, but I feel like color-wise, they're pretty similar. But Bread and Butterflies has that green shift, so it reminded me of Demeter's Harvest from the Goddess Complex collection. This one's obviously a much brighter shade of yellow because it's inspired by corn, but it still has that greenish shimmer to it. The only thing that's missing really is the flakies and the magnetic effect. So here is 1 coat of both Bread and Butterflies next to I'm a Mother Effin' Supernova. Definitely not similar, but once you layer Demeter's Harvest on top, I feel like it gives it a very similar vibe. So if you wanted Bread and Butterflies to be more opaque and you don't care about the magnetic effect, this combo is probably your best bet. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Mooncat's new Alice in Wonderland collection in collaboration with Disney. Again, big thank you to Mooncat for sponsoring this video. This is a limited edition collection, so I will have Mooncat's website linked down below so you can get more details on that. I cannot wait to hear what you all think about this release. I feel like Mooncat has really set the standard, or at least their standard, for collaborations, and they have just knocked it out of the park. I was so impressed with the Hocus Pocus 2 collection a couple of months ago, and this collection just is even better than that, I would say. So it just makes me so excited to see what they do in the future and whatever collaborations we'll see moving forward. As far as the lineup goes, I mean, while I do really like it, I have seen a few comments saying they were kind of disappointed maybe that there's no red for the Queen of Hearts, and I think I would agree with that. Like, I know we just got a red with Shroomdom from the Folktale collection, but I think I still would have loved to see a red in this lineup, just like a different variation, whether it was like a deeper red kind of jelly base with maybe some black glitter or something. I know some people are not crazy about the black flakes, but I feel like Mooncat would have been able to make it work and look really good. So yeah, that's kind of the only complaint I have, if we could call it that, because this definitely feels a little purple heavy. Like, there's 2 solid purples and then the lighter one is like borderline pink, but I think I would call it like a pink purple, not really a pink shade, but that's just me being nitpicky about it. But yeah, overall, I really do love this collection and think the box is amazing. It's just so beautiful, and I would say absolutely worth it, especially if you are a huge fan of Alice in Wonderland. But yeah, you'll have to let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.